fellow ghouls, it's me, Smeef, and in this review, I'll be talking briefly about the 1988 classic Beetlejuice, directed by Tim Burton, who I'll also be discussing further, and starring Michael Douglas, but that name was already taken, so he had to change it to Keaton as Beetlejuice, the ghost with the most.
It's showtime.
A movie so popular that it got its own cartoon that had nothing to do with the movie.
Well, what do you know? Tomorrow I'm gonna be the big winner!
That's winner!
Whatever!
Now, I won't be diving too deep into the movie as a critique, because there isn't anything that I can say that hasn't been said.
We just have to keep this simple. We can do this. Come on.
No, we're just gonna keep things a little casual, you know? Talk about why I liked it. And this movie was just dripping with charm. You see that? That's charm goo right there. For a brief synopsis, Burton had such a specific style that made this movie so enjoyable, and an all-star cast that really brought it together. We're first introduced to the lovely Gina Davis and the most famous of the Baldwin brothers, Alec Baldwin, as Adam and Barbara. And man, did they do an excellent job of being boring. I mean, for God's sakes, their vacation gifts to each other are wood finish and wallpaper. Now that might sound like a dig, but I mean it in the best way possible. And that was the point. They were a very ordinary husband and wife that just happened to end up less alive than they previously were, and were forced to navigate the afterlife with nothing more than a manual that was apparently written by IKEA.
This book reads like stereo instructions.
Next is Delia, played by the great Catherine O'Hara, who was possibly one of my favorite parts of this movie after watching it as an adult. She plays an artist that specialized in Tim Burton art, and she belongs to this elitist group of people that are so self-important and, oh hey look, Dick Cavett. Anyway, she completely steals this movie for me, because she's so subtly over the top in her performance, and you can tell she really wants to be accepted by her peers.
I must express myself. If you don't let me gut out this house and make it my own, I will go insane and I will take you with me!
And Associate Bob from Demolition Man as Otho, played by Glenn Shattuck.
Deliver me from L.L. Bean.
Now Delia is the mother of Lydia, played by Winona Ryder, one of her earliest roles along with Charles, played by Jeffrey Jones as Lydia's father. Okay, moving on. After Adam and Barbara's untimely departure, their home is bought by our unusual family. And Adam and Barbara want them out, so they resort to trying to be spooky ghosts, not realizing that they're invisible to anyone that isn't strange and unusual.
I myself am strange and unusual.
Thank you for the assist, Winona. So, out of desperation, they decide to reach out to Beetlejuice by saying his name 3 times in order to get help ridding the house of the family.
Can you be scary?
Oh, I know you're asking me. Can I be scary? What do you think of this? You like it?
He's also the reason I caught a backhand for saying the F-bomb.
Nice f***ing model!
Young Smeef wasn't aware this was a naughty word. But it turns out that Beetlejuice is a poltergeist, and that goes sideways, leading to the family wanting to get rid of the ghosts. They decide to go with Otho instead of the obvious choice for someone that specializes in spectral evictions.
This house is clean.
But I loved this movie as a kid, and I still do as an adult. It was sprinkled with jokes that were for 2 audiences. And this will be a bit of a departure, but I am such a fan of Tim Burton's work. He had such a way of creating visuals that pulled you into the painting he was creating, with odd angles and often dark atmosphere that he even managed to create using bright colors and upbeat music. So if you'll indulge me, I'd like to briefly talk about a couple of Burton's other and possibly lesser known works. Hansel and Gretel. It's 1983 and Disney just launched as a premium channel, and they decide to have a Halloween special. So, Burton, who was an animator for Disney at the time, decides to make his interpretation of a Grimm's fairy tale. What could go wrong? And this movie just seems like Tim Burton had full creative control. It's such a bizarre movie and so entrancing to watch, filled with bright colors and imagery that's eerie and even scary in some places. I mean, look at this. It's a creepy looking gingerbread clown thing, and it's yelling at a kid to eat it. Wholesome family entertainment. It was hosted by Vincent Price, who I think it should be said was idolized by Burton, and he had the opportunity to work with him a few times in his career. Imagine being able to work with one of your heroes. Someday, Rip Brown. Someday. The other movies Burton worked with Price on were the movie Edward Scissorhands, which was one of Price's last times on screen, and Vincent. Speaking of which, Vincent. In 1982, Burton made a short film called Vincent that really shows that he had his style from really early on, with the style of animation and the way he depicted his characters. It's narrated by Vincent Price and follows a boy also named Vincent that wants to be Vincent Price. It's read like a poem and parallels the style of Edgar Allan Poe. It's surprisingly dark, well animated, and honestly, it's difficult to tell if the boy's going insane or if he just has an overactive imagination. If you can find it, I recommend giving it a watch. Burton was also instrumental in introducing the rest of the world to the wonderful Paul Reubens as Pee Wee Herman. Yet another project that Tim Burton brought to the big screen, as well as it becoming a child's TV show. I watched this movie hundreds of times over the years because I was obsessed with Pee Wee Herman as a kid. Turns out a character who started out in comedy clubs with suggestive and adult-related humor makes the perfect character for children's entertainment. Who knew? And this is more of an honorable mention for now because sadly and unexpectedly we lost Paul Reubens last year. And if I'm going to talk about him, I feel he deserves his own review, which I intend to do, so stick around for that. Frankenweenie. No, not the 2012 animated movie that Burton directed. I'm talking about the 1984 short film that Burton directed and got fired from Disney for. The movie opens with the Frankenstein parents, played by Daniel Stern, and yet another loss this year, Shelley Duvall, watching a movie made by young Victor Frankenstein. Yeah, I know, but I guess like Dr. Frankenstein, we were all kids once with aspirations of reanimating the dead. But what I find interesting is how this particular scene might imitate real life. The movie that Victor is showing to his parents is a prehistoric themed movie about dinosaurs and cavemen, with sets made of cheap arts and crafts and his mother's oven mitts. Why does this seem familiar? Because it's very similar to the movie Prehistoric Cavemen that Burton made when he was 13 years old. He made it with a Super 8 film camera, and given what he had to work with, was a good attempt at stop-motion animation. Oh yeah, and you heard right, this movie got Burton fired from Disney because it got a PG rating. And that was back when PG actually meant something. What earned that rating, you might ask? This scene right here.
Come here, Sparky. Come here. Come on, Sparky. Come on. Come get it.
Sure, it's implying that the dog is killed, but there's no thud, no cries of pain, no visual violence at all. You want to see another Disney movie from 27 years earlier that was eventually given a G rating? Old Yeller. Now, if that's not child appropriate, I don't know what is. Talk about an absolute sham. How is this worse than this? I call bullshit. Well, in the biggest Baby Please Come Back story, Burton eventually started making Disney-produced movies again. One of which was a now animated Frankenweenie. Good on him for taking the high road. Now, I could definitely go on for a while talking about Tim Burton's work. Admittedly, I'm not a fan of all of his films, but that doesn't change the fact that he created some of the most remarkable works in modern cinema. He's got one of the most recognizable styles that can be both whimsical and oddly terrifying at the same time. Now, I know I didn't talk much about his obvious hits like Batman, but we all know those are classics. I really just want to encourage you, if you have the time, look up some of Burton's older films and give them a watch. I'm Smeef Erickson, and thanks for listening.